Suave.
I've been in my bag for a while, I'm invincible. Story of a young boss, grinding shit get critical. Calling on my bros one time, cause you special. I had some hoop dreams of right rounds for my mentor. Every target that I shoot is on point like a pencil. Different road, changed relationships, I'm so sorry. Came up from the trenches and I made it, I say hardly. Now
Bet Online is your number one source for all of your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. Bet Online continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. Alrighty, guys, we are back with another episode of the What's in Your Bag podcast presented by Bet Online. As always, I'm your host, Andrew Robinson, and before we introduce our special guest for the day, you guys know we got to get the business out of the way, so I'm going to need you guys to just stop what you're doing. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and tap that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. It goes a long, long way. If you're in this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We're in the middle of our creator series right now. We have another wonderful guest that we're super excited about. So if you guys are enjoying this creator series so far, make sure you guys are subscribing and following along our journey. That was my guy, Pull Up Tay, on the intro. It's going to be him as well on the outro. One of the hottest up-and-coming artists out of DMV. So make sure you guys go stream his music, man. Show my guy some love. But without further ado, this is somebody who we are super, super excited to have on today, guys. This is somebody who does extensive work in the business of basketball space, digital media, digital marketing, kind of a little bit of everything, So she's somebody who we're super excited to have on. I'm super excited to talk with today. Another journalism alum, so I'm glad to be able to kind of talk to somebody who kind of has a similar background as me, but we are pleased to be joined by none other than Jessica Slate, the founder of the Slatehouse. And Jessica, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad I could make it, and I'm excited to talk to you and just talk about everything that's going on. So this is fun.
No doubt. Now, before we kind of get into it, just how is the off season right now? I feel like for the NBA it's kind of the off season, but I feel like for somebody like yourself who's working in social media and digital marketing, there isn't really much of an off season for you, right? So just talk about just kind of what you're up to. How's the summer going right now? Just how's life hit?
Yeah, no, off season for me actually ends up getting a lot busier because that's when the players are available. They can start working on all of their side stuff. They obviously still have training going on and vacations in there, but it's a lot of executing events for their charities or putting on camps. If they're going to different events, we have to get digital media for that. So it definitely ramps up once they kind of have the freedom to travel where they want. This past month and a half, I've probably been to Charlotte like 3 times for different events for different players. So the cross country travel is ramping up. But once season comes back, it actually starts to slow down and I can kind of do almost everything remotely. Especially with a lot of the stuff I do is media related. So I can coordinate with teams and really rely on them to get a lot of the content for me. So there's a lot more synergy during the regular season.
Nice. What would you say has been your favorite thing that you've done so far this summer, whether it be an event, activity, kind of what has been, if you have anything that kind of sticks out from the summer so far?
It's the second year I've done it, so I kind of anticipated that it would be my favorite thing, but we do Torrey Craig Day down in Great Falls, South Carolina, and we put on a 3-on-3 tournament with local players for cash prize. There's barbecues, there's food trucks, bounce houses, raffles, everything. It's just, a really cool event for the community to come out, get to interact with Torrey. He's from there, so it was really important to him that he, didn't find success and then just drop off, but that he kept coming back and being a part of the community that helped him get there. So it's really cool for me to get to be a part of that. And then, of course, putting on the tournament is a lot of fun and getting to see 3-on-3 and out at the park. And so it's just a lot of fun. So that went really well again this year, and I look forward to it every year. But it's fun to get out down in South Carolina and see, what everyone's up to.
That's dope. Now, were you at Summer League this year?
I was. Yeah.
how were the vibes? We've got a couple folks on the podcast that were out there, and they've all had their kind of different accounts of just whether they were out there for 2 or 3 days, or whether they're out there for the whole 8-9 days, like just how it went out there. So what was your experience like from this past summer league? I know it's kind of like the NBA convention as far as like network
Yeah.
and things like that. So what was your experience this year?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's a lot less work than people who maybe work for agencies and they have to monitor their rookies or teams where they, have games every other day. For me, it's more like marketing, networking, because I can't get like a billboard to reach my clients. So stuff like this where I'm available, I'm around, I can also help the guys that I already work for. That's kind of the point of me going. So I'd originally planned to go for 4 days, and then one of my clients was like, hey, you can stay another day. And then someone was like, oh, you got to stay one more day. And then I drove back to Phoenix, which it's like 5 hours. It's not a terrible drive. It's, straight shot. Drove back to Phoenix one night. The next morning I left to go back to Vegas because someone had already been like, hey, we need to get you back for WNBA All-Star and start to do some WNBA stuff. And, of course you can start to combine more events and different networking things when you get back. So I had planned to go for 4 days. I think I ended up being there closer to 9, but no complaints by any means. There's much worse things I could be doing than watching, cheap professional basketball at a high level. So it's fun.
Thanks. Love it. I love it. How was the WNBA All-Star game? I heard it was an awesome environment out there in Vegas this year for the All-Star game.
Yeah, it was so much fun. I've never seen that much like commitment by celebrities and athletes and especially NBA players to like be there, be courtside, involved in the game. I think the WNBA did a really good job of making it both entertaining and competitive. And I had been to previous All-Star games that, if I had no context, no idea, I would have thought it was a regular season game. It's just how low energy it was. So this year was like, I was really impressed and just, happy for women's basketball to be getting the platform and the attention it deserves from so many high profile people.
That's dope. That's dope. Now, I was supposed to have my co-host on here, Alexis, with us. She couldn't make it. She had to run, but she actually does digital, social and digital for the Phoenix Mercury. So I know that, obviously you being in Phoenix, the Mercury, have a lot going on right now with obviously DT and BG out there. I feel just the growth of the WNBA right now is super amazing to see. Obviously, the New York Liberty, got the thing going on. The Aces are great. But just how, I know you've probably been to a bunch of Mercury games, but how cool is it to kind of be in Phoenix and get to watch, Taurasi and BG out there kind of in your hometown?
It's fun. And I've worked with the WNBA. I worked for the Connecticut Sun. So it's fun to be kind of on both sides of it, where you're working for the team and you can see internally just the efforts that the teams, the players, the league are making to continue to grow the sport. But then to now have the opportunity to be in Phoenix and see, pretty lifetime quality players. Obviously, Taurasi's for sure Hall of Fame. You've got BG and that whole story and just all the passion that the Phoenix fans have and, the community. It's fun too, because I'm going to Suns games, so I can kind of compare them, and they're obviously both fun and it's very much a different game, but the fans of the Mercury games are so much more committed and entertaining to me that really any chance I can get to go to a Mercury game, I love it.
That's awesome. I don't know if you know Robin Brown, but she used to work for the Connecticut as well. She's yeah, she went to Quinnipiac with me. We were classmates in the journalism program. That's my girl, so I got to give her a shout out on here as well.
Such a small world.
Yeah, small world, man. We were back in her master's class together a couple of years ago. So shout out Robin, man. That's
No, Robin's
no, she literally is. She literally is. So kind of want to get into your personal story and your personal kind of journey into this digital media space and concierge stuff. I feel like for me, right, I think it's so cool for me to be able to kind of have these type of conversations. The week before last, we had Juju Adams on here, and she was talking about kind of her transition into kind of going to USC and majoring in broadcast and kind of like thinking that like we were always taught in school, right, if you're trying to pursue broadcast journalism and you're trying to make it, right, like you got to, start at a small market and, kind of
Yeah.
work your way up the ladder. And then, maybe one day you'll be able to kind of get to ESPN or whatever the case may be, right? Like that was kind of always the path that was laid out. And I've seen people who came before me who are kind of on that path now. And one of the things that she talked about was obviously she's working for GQ Sports now, and she's done stuff with the NBA on social. And she kind of talked about how social media has kind of expedited the kind of opportunities that you can have in this kind of space. So I kind of want to talk about for you, your journey in broadcast and kind of how you got to be in the space now to where it's a lot different than that traditional broadcast look and feel. Though you're still doing digital media, you're also doing like management and you're kind of doing a little bit of everything. So talk about that journey kind of for you and what that looked like along the way.
Yeah. So I started with journalism, and all my experience through college, I was working with Longhorn Network for ESPN, Fox Sports, doing play-by-play and sideline reporting and stuff for different sporting events. So I was very committed kind of to that ESPN Sports Center path. And then my very first job out of college, I was doing videography. So I had the opportunity to kind of step back and learn more technical skills, practice more production that I learned from ESPN. And then eventually went to Phoenix to try and commit more to sports, just make sure I stayed on that sports path specifically, and did more play-by-play and analysis, but had the opportunity to start doing some more social media. And kind of at that point, teams and athletic departments had social media, but it was not like a full effort type. It was very different. They had interns making graphics on Canva. There was no look and feel books or anything streamlined. So I had the opportunity to start building kind of some of that stuff for some of these smaller athletic departments, and I really kind of enjoyed the opportunity to showcase the athletes and not either just talk about them or be me versus them when it's reporting. So slowly just did a little bit more of the behind the scenes stuff. I ended up working with the Suns as their in-arena host. So it was still kind of the in front of the camera type of thing, but on a different end where it's not analysis and not reporting. So it was real important to me to try and take as many different opportunities to kind of be a utility player and not just stuck in that like ladder that they tell you about for journalism. I was more worried about like getting to the top of the ladder and only having one skill and like not liking it when I get there. So at least if it might take me longer if I'm kind of zigzagging, but I'll have all these different skills by the time I get there that I can kind of be more selective. And it's worked out that way. I ended up working with Connecticut Sun doing all their social media, which was, an unimaginable learning experience and just so much fun to get to be creative again with like Robin and the women's basketball and what the NBA is trying to do is during the COVID, 2020 with bubble and players all over the place, all kinds of different things going on. So just the more I worked behind the scenes, the more I liked kind of creating the opportunities to showcase the athletes with messages and content that was driven by them. And that's what ended up motivating me to start my own business and do it independently. Was I'd had at that point almost a decade worth of experience doing kind of anything communications related. We're shooting the video, we're editing the video, we're doing the interviews, coordinating it all, making graphics. If there's something you can do in a social or like broadcast department, I've probably done it at this point. So I just decided I'd like to take all of those skills and give kind of athletes their own communications and like social media department so that they can showcase their foundations and their basketball careers and their families and whatever they're passionate about. Give them the tools to, one, not have to be distracted when they step away from basketball or football or whatever it may be, but that they can also do it authentically and they don't really have to modify it based on a generic marketing plan that a lot of agencies end up having to push out just based on quantity of clients. So try to keep it kind of small and intimate, but again, having just years of experience of running entire team social departments and stuff, I wanted to give the guys that opportunity. So it's been a lot of fun. And constantly evolving beyond what I had hoped to do with the company to where we are. It's now gotten much broader as far as responsibilities I take on.
Yeah. I think that was kind of important that you said that, because like I feel like we all have a vision of, all right, this is what I want my career to look like, and we have that in our mind. So when you kind of look back at it, now you said you have almost 10 years of experience. How do you reflect on where you thought you would have been versus where you are now? Do you prefer one or the other? Are you glad that like that kind of goal, that vision turned out differently? How do you kind of reflect back on that and where you are now and how things turned out versus maybe, all right, if I would have taken this path, maybe I would have been a little further, maybe I would have been a little far behind. Like how do you kind of evaluate that at this stage?
Yeah, I probably would have had a much more stable situation as far as like, exactly how much money you're going to make per year. You can live in one place. You can have a focus on a goal. But that wasn't super important to me. I think where I'm at now, I'm making more of an impact than I would have in broadcast. At least in my case, it was a lot of thinking about myself. Like, how am I going to look? How is this going to help my career? How am I, how's the story going to be part of my trajectory? And it was a lot about me. And I just feel like naturally when you are on camera and you're the center of things, that you kind of have to think about a lot of that stuff. I really appreciate that, most of my day now is thinking about other people, thinking about the people they care about. Foundations, we're doing a lot of charity work. So helping people put on camps and academic programs and scholarships. It just feels a lot more rewarding at the end of the day. And for only really in the grand scheme of things, just getting started. I think even long term, I'm going to reflect back and really appreciate the career path I took much more, just because I feel like I'm going to end up doing a lot more hands-on helpfulness and making an impact and stuff that I probably wouldn't have done had I stayed in broadcast, because I probably just would have been a little bit more focused internally than externally.
Yeah, for sure. What kind of advice would you give to somebody else who maybe sitting in that classroom like we were in college and they had the idea of, what their career is going to look like? Because I feel like for me, I feel like it's so refreshing to kind of see people like yourself and people like Juju who have kind of sat in the same classrooms that I've had and made those reels and had to edit together a news package, and kind of to see what you guys have been able to do now, right? And all different type of avenues. Because even for somebody like myself who's kind of trying to navigate that space, I'm playing basketball, but I have this journalism degree and I have a podcast, but I kind of like fashion and I like a lot of different things. So I feel like I have a different, I guess, viewpoint for how I want my post basketball career to look. So I think it's always inspirational for me to be able to hear stories like this one, to where it kind of turns out differently. But I think what you guys do is awesome, and being able to work with professional athletes and being the type of spaces that you guys are in. So what advice would you give to somebody else who is maybe sitting in that JRN one-on-one class right now and has a view on what their future is going to be?
I think it is important to not get so focused on like a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, because that was very much me. And like you were saying, like in journalism, they're just drilling at you, like you need to go start in Midfield, Texas and report high school football. And then eventually you'll get to Waco. And then eventually you might get to Dallas. But if you wanted to get to New York or LA, like you're going to be 45. And I think it's easy to get locked into like, that's the blueprint that's been set for me and that's what I have to do. But there's so many tools and ways for people to create content, to showcase themselves, to get experience that aren't in that original blueprint. And I think if you can just get past maybe the nerves or the fear of stepping out of kind of that mainstream track, you can really create a lot of opportunities and experiences for yourself that you might not have had otherwise. And as, risky or as much as it takes believing in yourself to do that, it to me has, paid off, and it's worth it in the long run.
For sure. Great advice, for sure. I'm taking my mental notes as well, So kind of changing gears a little bit to your work with the Slatehouse, right? Kind of, you mentioned on a previous podcast that kind of Andre Drummond was kind of the first person who kind of really, saw the vision and believed in what you were doing and stuff like that, and kind of helped you kind of catapult you into this space. And since then, I know you work with guys like Grant Williams and T Mac and all that kind of stuff. So talk about, what do you think? Because I feel like, again, when it comes to NBA players, right, they don't let everybody into their circle. You know what I'm saying? You have to be a certain type of person to be able to be around NBA players. So what do you think allowed you to, or Andre Drummond, for example, to trust you to be able to be like, Jessica, I want you to be on my team. You're somebody who I want to continue this relationship with, because there's probably somebody who's watching this podcast and it's like, yo, I want to be where Jessica's at. I want to do what she's doing, work with players, right? But it's easier said than done to be able to get these guys who have these type of platforms and type of money to be able to trust you to even welcome you into their circle. So what would you say was, I guess, something that kind of helped you, be able to, I guess, gain these guys' trust initially?
Yeah, I mean, that's really a great question for Andre, because I would love to know. But he, I think part of it was consistency. So in my kind of experience in when we were negotiating and kind of pitching me working with him, because at that point it was kind of like, hey, I work for a team. I'm interested in starting this company. I want to be very upfront with you that, like, in order for me to work with you, I'm taking this big risk of quitting my full-time, stable job. I'm confident that I can do that, but I just want you to know, like, I need the same type of commitment from you. And he had no problem with that. And I'm sure he probably appreciated that I wasn't, light about it, that I was like, hey, I'm taking what you're interested in seriously and, like, really committing to it. Because we knew he wanted to start a clothing line and do all these different creative things outside of basketball. And so I do think part of that was huge, and that he saw my commitment to what I was trying to do and the passion of it. And I think consistency is probably big. I had worked in sports in a bunch of different roles up until that point, and my character and the intangible stuff was really important to me up until, I mean, still is my priority. And I think they're not typically going to be looking for the most, searching through for the most technical skills. If they want a photographer to come to their practices, if they see one person on Instagram and they like their photos, they're not going to start doing a compare and contrast of 45 other photographers. They're like, I like this guy, I want this guy. And they have the means to make that happen. And so then it comes into, like, well, if I ask people about you, what will they say? Are they going to say, like, oh, you're nice, or you're reliable, you show up on time, you are discreet, you're not posting all their behind the scenes lives or posting the location of them and risking their safety, stuff like that. Stuff that, again, isn't the skill. It doesn't make or break how well I am at doing social media or content creation, but it is a really important aspect for this specific type of social media role versus if you worked for an agency and you did marketing for clothing or something. There's different interpersonal skills that come with it. And I think, again, we'd have to ask Andre, but I do know that was always a big priority to me, that I wanted to be reliable, dependable, and somebody that they could trust with their ideas and kind of their safe spaces outside of sports, that they didn't have to worry about me impacting that in a negative way. And I think that's the stuff that's going to be important when they're looking to hire, personally onto their own teams versus just the technical skills. Because you could have all the technical skills in the world, but if you're risking, their safety or their privacy, it's not really going to matter at the end of the day how good you are at something.
That's a good point. That's a great point. I feel like being able to protect and I guess value somebody else's privacy and space, even sometimes even more so than your own, when you're dealing with players like that, is super important.
Totally.
So, and again, I want to preface this question by saying, I don't want to count your pockets. So I'm not asking you your salary or anything like that. But something I always wondered was, like, you mentioned just now that you had a kind of a stable job, you were working, and you just kind of took a leap of faith to start this venture, the Slatehouse, and work with Andre, right? So I want to talk to you about kind of like at the end of the day, you still have to support yourself, right? So when you're working with these
Yeah.
clients, like how does the compensation work? Is it like a freelance type of thing where, okay, I handle this task and you do this? Are you a part of a guy like, for example, Andre J. Drummond? Like, are you on like his team where he's paying you a salary? Like, how does this type of stuff work when it comes to, financially compensating yourself and being able to make a living when you're dealing with athletes in this space?
Yeah, I'll preface it by saying I don't want to shatter any illusion that social media in any role is, going to be the most high paying thing in the world. I think if I was in this for money, I would have gone to law school or something. But um I I tried to create as much stability as possible. So most of all of my full-time clients are on like a contract basis. Easiest way like I usually describe it is like a gym membership. So they pay me, we're deciding how much work I plan to do, what that might look like. They have access to me because it's not a regular agency. Like I get calls at 3 a.m., I get calls at 6 a.m. I'm traveling all the time. So they get a different type of schedule out of me that would be hard to manage if I was doing hourly. I don't want to keep track of hours. I don't want them to be stressed. Like every time we call her, she's like counting numbers. I want them to be able to, contact me as much as possible. So I set up like a monthly, again, like a membership. Same concept as a salary where I'm just not really looking at the annual number. I'm more concerned with like how much work I'm doing per month, and that's the number we figure out. And it's set up on a month-to-month basis, standard contract, if either one of us wants to terminate it, there's 14 days or whatever. So that gives me my consistency, and that I know like these clients are locked in for monthly, like first of the month I get the money, that's paying bills, that's, keeping me alive. And then other projects will also be more like a freelance model. So typically with events, I'll do like Super Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, different sporting events. That will be more short term. But again, I just was never someone that liked to do hourly because I know I'm going to work as many hours as I need to do the job properly. And I don't want
stuff.
I'm like, if it takes me 8 hours, and sometimes I'm going to stop and watch TikToks while I'm editing, I don't know. So it's going to get done. But if I were to count the exact hours I'm sitting there doing something, it's probably not efficient for the company or the player. And I don't want to be taking advantage of them because I appreciate these opportunities and there's that level of trust. And so even with events, I'll kind of come up with a flat number of like, okay, we know that I'm going to have to cover this many practices, this many media appearances, do this many interviews, and kind of what the deliverables for that will be. We need to edit 6 different TikToks. We need to get this many photos and do this many posts in a week. And then, negotiate with them like, okay, well, that's worth, I don't even know, $1,000. And that covers the whole week. And then they're not worried about like, hey, we need you to go to this, or we don't need you to go to this. It's just the same rate no matter what. And I can focus on working and not like counting numbers the whole time. And it's worked for me so far. So I like it. I don't like having to think about like, oh, it's $25 an hour or something. And I'll do small stuff too, where it's even just with like clients, they might need a one-time, what's a good example? If someone gets like traded, helping them pack and move, like that's like 2 days of my life, just packing and moving. And then like, we're done with it. So get paid for like those 2 days. And then we move on. Like, I don't need to be in a contract with them. I don't need like a consistent, again, hourly thing. It's just per project really. Right. So there's just kind of 3 different ways I do it. Preferred is long-term, and then they can ask me as much as they want, as often as they want, and it'll get done. So it's kind of nice for them to have me on standby. Again, like a gym, you can go as much as you want, as little, but like you will always be able to go.
That's dope. So how do you navigate, like, because I feel like I'm into like content creation and like making reels and TikTok, stuff like that too. And I was listening to different content creators talk about like their rates for like videos and stuff. And like, they'll talk about how they'll talk to brands and they'll be like, all right, well, like, how much would you charge us for this? And it's like, all right, I got to throw out a number. Like, what should I say? What is my time worth? What is my, the editing stuff worth, right? How do you kind of determine, what's your charge when you're thinking about, all right, well, because I think they too, right? You have to keep it in context as well. Like, you're working with maybe NBA guys who might be on different pay grades as far as salaries, right? So, how do you determine charge somebody for something that a piece of work that you're going to do and determine, all right, well, I think this is worth this much. Maybe they might think it's not worth as much, but you're, as the person doing the work and doing the editing, obviously will have kind of, I guess a better idea of that.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is I try to be really transparent. And so when I'm talking to my other friends that work in content, other photographers, editors, social media people doing some type of freelance, I'm always curious what they're getting paid. And also I'm hiring a lot of freelancers. So like as often as I can outsource and just be the creative director and like find the budget to get someone else to be the photographer for the project, editor, etc. That's also how I'm learning the rates, because I have to figure out what they want to get paid. And then I keep that in mind. To my friends, my advice is always, you won't get what you don't ask for. So if you think you're worth $500 as a photographer, one, it's worth always explaining, I think, how they got to that number. So like if you go to an athlete who maybe doesn't understand what they're getting for that $500, well, yes, you only spent an hour in the gym and you're only going to give them back 100 photos. But those 100 photos came down from 2,000 photos, and then you had to edit all of them in Lightroom and create a new preset because you've never been in that gym before. So there's hours of work that they don't see, and that's what the rest is covering. So in reality, I'm usually like, hey, this is what we're listing it as like $500 an hour, but it really ends up being $20 an hour because this is what we're doing. And I try to be as transparent as possible of like, here's the formula of how I got to this number. I'm typically not just throwing a number out there. And then at this point, I can kind of, at least for me, gauge, okay, well, this is how much work I do for these other players. And we've all agreed that this number makes sense for us. This is where I'd like to go. It's not going to be like he's an all-star, he's making $100 million contract, he gets this price, but this guy's a rookie and his contract hasn't hit yet, like he gets this price. It's, you try and work with them. Obviously, if they don't want to spend as much, then we just don't get as much work out of it. But I'm not shopping around to be like, okay, well, you make more, so you have to pay more just because of that. I try and keep it pretty consistent for, this is what my work is worth. And that changes because I do concierge services, that when I'm doing the technical skills and shooting and editing, coordinating all the content, that's going to end up being more per hour than helping you pack or helping you ship cars, or your day-to-day management of setting up gyms and stuff like that. That doesn't take nearly the same technical skills of years of training. And I think I saw somewhere, and it's, I feel like a pretty well-known thing, but people are getting paid for the years of experience that it took to get there. So when you see like major CEOs of a bank, you're not paying them millions of dollars because their job requires millions of dollars of skill. You're paying them because it took them 20 years to be eligible for this job. And that's what the $1 million is covering. So that's something to keep in mind too, when people are hiring. You can find an intern that does photography that's groundbreaking. We had people at the Super Bowl that were college interns. Their photography went viral. It's all over everywhere. They asked for like $15 an hour. And I was like, we need to work on that because Rihanna is reposting you. Right. But that's part of it. They also have to realize their worth of the quality of it, but they do realize like, hey, I am an intern. I'm 19 years old in college, versus we have these photographers that worked for teams for 20 years and now they freelance. They're going to cost more. So it's not as simple as just walking in. I mean, I guess it kind of is. When you go shopping, there's, a t-shirt with $20, but then you go see a Gucci t-shirt, same concept. It's a graphic on a t-shirt. Nothing has changed. That one's $500. So you're going to have to shop around. I just try not to be the Gucci shirt asking for $500 because I can.
Yeah, yeah. Nah, I like that. I think that what you said about paying for kind of what you've done and your experience at the gym, though, that's facts. So I'm
Yeah.
asking because obviously one of the things that's super important as far as just working in the NBA, right? People always say like, relationships are everything. Relationships are super important, right? And I feel like even in your job and your space that you're in, it's even more important, right? Because when you're dealing with, concierge or, digital media and things like that, and you have a business where you're trying to acquire players, you need to have those type of relationships to where you can say, hey, I'm Jessica, this is what I do, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like there's also a balance though, because again, like when you're in these spaces, right, you might come across somebody at Summer League, or you might be at, NBA All-Star and just be at dinner and meet a player, right? There's a balance between being in a space and maybe thinking like, dang, this is somebody who I know I could help, or who may need my help, and giving them that elevator pitch versus like, all right, I'm just in this space. Maybe we're at a dinner and I'm just gonna vibe and be in this space organically, right? How do you balance that? Because I feel like that's a very fine line to walk when it comes to doing the business that you do, right? And being around players and NBA guys all the time. I think the business, because I feel like I struggle with this too, like having a podcast and being in this media space, you always want to be like, hey, like, I'm a big fan of your work. I love to talk about the things that you do. But also when you come across people, you don't want to hit them with a business pitch right off of the bat, right? So how do you balance those things when you're in these type of spaces?
I probably am one of the worst people of like not pitching myself. Like the amount of times I'll walk away and I'm like, I didn't even introduce myself because I'm so okay with like, oh, if I joined a table and everyone kind of already knows each other and like I seamlessly become a part of the conversation, I don't want to stop and be like, hello, I'm Jessica. Like, nice. Like, I'll just be part of the conversation. We walk away and they don't know who I am. Like, the moment was good. So I'm not super concerned with my name and stuff. But then I will walk away and be like, oh, that would have been fun, like a really cool person to work with. Or I think, there was a lot of opportunity there. But I think I'm always really focused on keeping things as organic as possible. So in the same way other people, you just casually will mention, it's like, oh, what do you do for a living? Like I'll try to be as like precise and like clear about what I do. And so that they kind of immediately understand it. And then a lot of like showcasing my work so that's on social media. A lot of those I've had multiple people be like, oh, I saw all my teammates posting your work from their runs. Like, I had to like reach out because like I might need some help with this, like stuff like that, where you use social media as, a resume and a platform to showcase what you're doing so that eventually when people see you in person, they kind of already have an idea of what you do. But no, I mean, part of it is I just wait for opportunities. So if someone is like, oh, I hate that I have to do this for social media, I'm like, oh, I can help you. And like, that's it. I don't need to sit there and tell them like a whole pitch. If they have follow-up questions, great. If they don't, I could have helped them and I don't need to. But I'm not interested in convincing someone to work with me or like selling them on it. I'm not good at it. So I think I really do just focus on naturally building relationships and friendships and getting to know people. And then if down the road that works out and we work together, great. If not, the more people is always great. And a lot of times it's good for finding other people jobs. They need branding and sponsorships, things I'm not good at. I know other people that I can be like, oh, I saw that you posted on Instagram, you're looking for this, she can help you. Like stuff like that. Just building the connections to build them and not necessarily to get things out of people or build a specific strategic relationship has seemed to been more successful for me than elevator pitches.
Yeah. I think that's great perspective, because I feel like I was just listening to a podcast. It was actually I saw a clip of a podcast on Instagram on Switch Cultures, and it was Troy Payne, who was James Harden's agent, came on the podcast and was talking about like just summer league and like all the people who you run into, and I always hear people, oh yeah, man, you might just bump into somebody in the hallway and like, yeah, go talk to him and go tell him what you do. And I'm like, in theory, like that's dope, man. I think everybody should, I think that's a great piece of advice, but I think it's also a balance, because there's probably people who come up to these, especially NBA players or people who are in that space all the time, and you don't want to feel like you're always first encounter going up to somebody and making a request, So I was just like to hear people's perspectives on that.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a fine line when it comes to that. But when you think about, your kind of experiences and the work that you've done, is there one maybe relationship that you can remember, like, dang, like, this relationship really paid off, or, me having this conversation with somebody turning into this down the line, and dang, I'm really thankful that, I met this person here. Like, is there one that kind of pops up to where, was super, I guess, valuable in hindsight?
Yeah. So when I moved to Phoenix, I was a year out of college. So I was really fresh on like, I'm going to message everyone on LinkedIn that might possibly know somebody that, because I went out there without like a really solid job. I knew I could do some digital writing, and I did fan-sided and covered the Lakers and different stuff digitally, but really heavy on like the traditional concept of marketing of like, hey, I just want to introduce myself, would love to pick your brain. And now in return, I have people asking me that constantly. So I'm like, the least I can do is answer these people, because I was 100% in their shoes. But because of that, I ended up reaching out to Jeremy McPeak. He had worked in for the Suns as vice president of, I believe, digital communications was his title, but hugely successful with the Phoenix Suns in a digital space. And by the time I met him, he had his own digital media company, as well as was teaching a class at Arizona State. And part of it was he had special guests come in once a week to speak to his students on different aspects of basically being successful in sports media. So as a fresh kid out in the world, he had me come in to talk specifically to them about networking as, a peer and someone that's their age and in the process of it right now, trying to find jobs, and continued to kind of build that relationship with him because I had truly been networking. And again, I wasn't going to him. He didn't work for the Suns, so it's not like I was asking for a job from the Suns. I didn't really know exactly what he did as far as what his company was responsible for. So I didn't have an end goal. I just knew this is someone I can learn from, that can mentor me. There might be opportunities. If not, like, I'll walk away with more seeds of knowledge than I came with. And because of that, one, has continued to be a great mentor because he does have his own media company. So I can kind of see what he's doing and do it in different ways. But it's also created so many opportunities because he's been so generous in bringing me in to those projects that he gets for his company. So we've done Super Bowl together. We've done Fiesta Bowl, Bridgepoint Bowl. I don't even get all the bowl names right because they change sponsors every year. But if there's a bowl game in Phoenix, we have worked on it together. I helped him with some stuff for Final Four. He does stuff with MMA fighting in California. So there's all these really cool projects that was so important for me and for learning, as well as just getting really cool experiences. I mean, there's only so many people that can say they worked on Super Bowls. And for him to continue to bring me into that stuff, because I was just a kid that, probably pressed him a little hard on LinkedIn, has been so fortunate. And it's been really cool to kind of watch over the years of he helped me get the job in Connecticut, as far as like just text me one day and was like, how do you feel about moving to Connecticut? And I was like, I don't know, sure. Like, okay. And he was like, I know Amber Cox. She's with the Connecticut Sun. She used to be with Phoenix. She's looking for someone. So many opportunities have come from that. And hopefully whatever work I've contributed has been helpful in return. But just a really great person that has also been huge to reminding me to kind of give back in the same way. So helping he does a lot with interns and ASU students, GCU students, bringing them into his projects and giving them opportunities. So when I go, I take that same model of, trying to give people chances and not always going with maybe the veteran photographer or videographer, but find people that this is a project we can use, a new perspective on, or, a younger talent. So unimaginable ways that I've learned from him, but definitely one of my favorite connections that I've made, and was lucky that it was so early in my career.
Awesome. I always love hearing these stories, like these LinkedIn message stories, because it's like throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks. Because like you messaging people and you don't know if they're gonna respond or anything, and it's like just to see what's been able to come from that since then is super amazing. So I hope if folks are listening, man, take advantage of LinkedIn, take advantage of Instagram, even send those DMs, and you never know, you
Yeah,
might get a response that could change the course of your career. And I think that's
I do that constantly. I think there is a stigma of like, oh, it's just a DM, like it's not serious. And obviously how you type it matters. If you're like, hey yo, I need a job, like that's not serious. But no, I think my thing is the worst thing that happens is they don't respond. Like, and we move on. There's infinite DMs that you can send, infinite messages, emails. Um, and I'm constantly messaging people like, hey, I saw you're working on this project. If you need help, like let me know, or like I have somebody that can do that for you. Like a lot of times I'll reach out to pitch other people, and then at least you're building those relationships, because they might not need me now, but they might need me later. And if I can help them find the right person for what they're looking for, then who am I to stand in the way of either of those people connecting? So you can truly network through any platform. It's just a matter of being willing to do it.
no facts. I think that's the most important thing. I feel like a lot of people, especially in today's day and age, they let their ego get in the way of sending a DM, and they pride might get hurt if they don't get a response back or something like that. So you kind of got to be able to put that to the side in order to get to where you're trying to go in this industry, especially. Um,
Yeah.
but I want to talk to you kind of about your work, kind of, let's say we're talking about Andre, right? So I feel like your work obviously is kind of mainly focused like digital media and social media and building guys' online presence and things like that. I'm curious to know, like for a guy like Andre Drummond, right? Multiple time All-Star, All NBA, like max contract type of guy, right? What does that look like trying to build a brand for him, whether it be a clothing brand or digitally, right? Because I feel like, for a player of his stature who has the resume that he has, who's made the money that he's made in his career, it is important to be able to brand yourself and present yourself a certain way online. So, for a player like that, what are some things that you think are important? How do you kind of approach, handling his things, like whether it be online or just ways that he's presenting himself in a business aspect outside of basketball?
Yeah. I mean, part of it, Andre, as an example, he just is truly a good person. So it's not like you're trying to sell something that isn't there. And he works with Jessica Sloan right now, who does a lot of branding and sponsorships and PR and stuff. And she's so phenomenal at showcasing who he really is and his experiences. And they've done all types of promotion for mental health and stuff. So having people in your team that understand who you are as a person so that they can promote kind of all the best sides of you is super important. And he's, been really great at finding those people to surround him. I think the other side of it is you can't, necessarily, you don't want to spin things. Like you want these guys to be good people, but you can really focus on the things that deep down matter. So we don't have to repost every little thing. We don't have to do PR stunts of like, oh, we're going to go to this like boys and girls club just because you had a bad week in media. Like we don't need to fake it. It's sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes bad games happen. You're going to have all kinds of comments from fans, from haters that are just flooding your inbox that might not necessarily reflect who you are as a person, but just how people see you. And I think it's important that when you do get the opportunity to showcase them and they get to showcase themselves, that you do, intentionally showcase it in the best light possible. And that's why it was so important to me to try and, give them the tools to do that they're going to have, Bleacher Report or ESPN or somebody showing and airing out things that they think is breaking news, but they get to control the narrative on their platforms and the things that come out of their corner and who they're surrounding themselves with and what they're posting and stuff like that. So, being intentional about like, okay, let's focus on posting this kind of stuff. Or if we're trying to grow their identity and it's, not so much about reputation or image, but just showcase more interests. If it's fashion, let's make sure we're communicating with teams to get tunnel picks, so that if you need a stylist, so that we can, do different features or find new magazine features, stuff like that, that you're looking for different opportunities to showcase what's important to them and who they really are, and worry a lot less about what everyone else is saying, so that the narrative that will matter at the end of the day, that is the true narrative, is what people push out themselves. And so just helping them curate that and cultivate it to, something that's presentable to the public, but that's authentic.
100%. Obviously, I know this hasn't happened with Andre or any guys you work with, but I feel like you made me think about it when you mentioned, like, dealing with like PR, or you have like a bad week in the media, right? So I'm gonna give you a hypothetical situation. I kind of just want to pick your brain on, your thoughts, given the experience that you have, right? Obviously, the whole thing with John Morant, right, or with his whole Instagram situation, if that happens with the players that you're dealing with, or Zion Williamson, when he was getting all that heat in the media about the things that he was doing off the court, right? And you're somebody who's managing social media. Like, how do you respond to something like that? Like, are you saying, all right, like, let's lay off of social media for X amount of time, or let's try to rebrand our image on social media to what? Because even yesterday I saw it was going around social media, like John Morant was working out in these t-shirts that were like, it said like accountability, and like, I was kind of clever that they got some pictures in that, though. You know what I'm saying? And like those got posted and stuff. So I don't think that would be a coincidence, but I kind of wanted to get your opinion on that. Like, how would you deal with a situation like that? What are some things that are important when trying to crisis manage? Because I think sometimes you have the response that, like, okay, no response is the best response. And then sometimes it's like, all right, we need to get a statement out there and something like that. So how would you deal with a situation like that?
I mean, usually my first call is to be like, why would you do this? And like, let's not do this again. Like, we can very much move on. Like, we can clean things up. We can spin whatever story we want to. Let's not repeat it. Like, let's let this be a fun little lesson and we move on. A lot of this stuff is not the end of the world. And so I think, there's going to be a news cycle or something that is not great. You might lose a little sleep over it. Obviously, extreme situations, that's a whole different thing. But a lot of the stuff we can move on from. And so I think, depending on the situation, if it's something that, is deserving of an apology, getting that out there, I think it's good to not only, one, apologize if you do something wrong, but you do have fans, kids looking up to you, whether you want that or not. Obviously, no one asks to be a public figure, but you know what you signed up for when you sign these contracts. Showing them that you can apologize and that you're not perfect and we can learn from things. To me, I mean, after that, I'm not the kind of person that let's go plant trees in the park and like do a whole media thing and like show that you actually are squeaky clean and you would never do something bad. Like, it happens and we're adults. And I think just going about it, from there, I mean, content wise, it's avoiding distractions. So like, I'm not going to tell them what to do with their lives. They're adults and they know what they're doing. You would definitely, I think a lot of it would end up being internal reflection. Like, there's not as much on my, in my experience and the things I want to do. I don't want to throw this huge PR campaign out. So I don't want to start making these wild articles. I don't want to set up interviews where we're talking about all their charity work or how they have a phenomenal relationship with their kids, or I don't even know. I'm not gonna like try and like create something sparkly over here so that we forgot what bad happened over here. But internally then, like, hey, maybe this week, like, let's really just be in the gym. Like, we'll get some gym content. We don't necessarily need motivational graphic tees, but like, let's focus. Like, as you normally would, they're going to be in the gym anyway because they're such high caliber athletes, but we can showcase that side of this week. We don't need to showcase your outfits. We don't need to showcase your social stuff. And some weeks you want to do that because you want to show that they're well-rounded and that they have lives outside of sports and that they see their families and they go to other sporting events or stuff like that. So, but maybe this week, next week, it's a lot of gym content, it's basketball content. If you don't want to post, that's fine. I don't think it needs to be like an edgy, start deleting everyone we follow and like delete every post that's ever like, you don't need to like black out social media. And I think it's really easy to get caught up again, how I was talking with broadcasting, where all you're thinking about is like the whole world is looking at me, like you're the center of the world, and you could be the highest profile athlete and something will happen tomorrow and other people will do things and there's other things in the world going on. And you apologize if you need to, you fix anything that might need to be fixed, and we like keep it pushing. Like we get focused on the sport, we get focused on any other goals we were trying to set, and we don't repeat the behavior. But I don't, I'm not one that's like, hey, let's do a whole puff piece on why you are a totally different person than the public thinks. The public is going to think what they, like I said before, they're going to think what they think. Even if you're an angel, they're going to make up their decisions and stuff. So if you sit there and sulk in the fact that they have this one formed opinion based on a mistake or something, you're only kind of confirming it to them. So you just keep it pushing.
Gems right there. I think that's important. That's important. One thing that you said too was, you want to be able to showcase guys in other lights and things that they're doing off the court, right? But I feel like it's a give and take in today's society, because I feel like there are a lot of players who get criticized for their presence on social media. Like, I remember reading the whole thing with Spencer Dinwiddie and Kyle Kuzma. Like, Dinwiddie went on the media and basically said that his priorities aren't focused on basketball and things like that. And then I feel like Kuz is a perfect example of somebody who kind of gets a bad rep a lot of times because he does like fashion. He's going to the shows in the fall. I mean, the summertime, the fashion shows, and he's dating Wendy Harlow, and people think he's kind of distracted from basketball. But me personally, I think it's dope that he's exploring other interests outside of the game. And at the end of the day, the partnerships that he has with Puma and Childhood Dreams and Tiffany, all these different type of brand deals are compensating him financially as well. So can you talk about just the importance of being able to kind of, I guess, show up on social media? But have you ever also maybe had to deal with like, all right, maybe am I doing too much on social media? Like, how people will perceive it if I'm playing bad, but then I'm posting on social media and stuff like that. Like, how do you deal with those types of situations?
In my experience, getting these guys to post on social media is like pulling teeth. So I'm always like, hey, can we post something? But I do think, and again, I don't know Kyle's situation or everyone's situation, but like in my case, I'm well aware of what the scores were, what that specific player's performance was. So how we post after the game is going to be different. If it was sometimes, doesn't mean we won't post. It just means we'll post those photos like tomorrow or in 2 days, or they'll just go on stories instead of, a hard post where you're trying to get feedback and stuff. Especially if you don't want a bunch of comments telling them they're a bum or something, because they scored 20 points instead of 35. But I think really you could be posting, in my experience, you could be posting on social media nonstop, and it's still such a small fraction. It takes 5 seconds to post on social media. So if he's sitting there and he's commenting on everything and he's reposting everything, then that does take some time. But if he's just posting pictures people took of him and sent him, like, that really doesn't take that much time. These guys, regardless of what they criticize each other about, are all out doing things that are not basketball. Even if it's hanging out with their families, if it's playing video game, like, it's not necessarily runways or restaurant openings or owning other companies, but there's nobody that only plays basketball and does zero other things. Maybe Kawhi Leonard, but again, he has a family. Like they have things that they do. Some of them, Kawhi is a great example. They don't want any of that out in the public, and I totally respect that. But for the ones that they want to post, I think That's a great way, one, for them to, interact with their fan base. It is a very public role, and there's a lot of people that are interested in their lives. And if you're willing to share it, I think that's very generous of them. And especially if you have different interests, I think it's always great to reinforce that, to younger student athletes and different people coming up into sports, that you don't just have to focus on that sport. You can also like art, you can also like fashion or reading or chess, or it's great to be well-rounded. And getting to see these guys and how well-rounded they are, just through the lens of social media, I think benefits more people than just them. And if they have the time to manage it, more power to them. Obviously, if you're like checking Instagram in practice, and that's a whole different problem, but I've never heard of that happening. So I think for the most part, yeah, if you're the teammate that doesn't want to post at all after a loss and your other teammate posts after a loss, you got to get over it. They're gonna, like, because for some people that's the therapeutic part of it, is they lost and now they can go to Instagram, and that's a place where there's different things interacting, and they have different things they can showcase because they don't want to focus on the fact that the basketball game was good. And I think being realistic about people handling their realities in different ways, it's not going to look the same, but it doesn't mean they don't also, have the impact of that loss or the impact of where the state of the season or something. People work through things differently, and sometimes posting more on social media is one of those ways.
Yeah. Well, this is low key a selfish question that I have to ask you, because I'm in awe at the amount you're able to handle. Like, I mean, obviously the work you do, it's hard enough for me to run my own brand, like All Facts Media and the podcast, and then my own personal brand I'm trying to develop and edit stuff and post reels and like edit the podcast. And like, you're managing multiple people's social media. You're starting to, doing charities and stuff. And like, even the stuff you did with T-Mac and the OBL, like, that is like a whole process in and of itself. Like, how do you find time to be able to do all that stuff? And because editing is not like at least for me, maybe I need to get my reps up, but I feel like editing is not like an easy thing. It takes time to be able to edit this stuff, especially to be able to present it in the way that you do. So how are you able to manage so many different tasks and handle so many different players? And, I don't know, that's just amazing to me.
If you ask my friends, it's because I don't have a social life. Like, they haven't seen me in years. I get texts that are like, "Are you alive?" I don't, because even when I do get free time, I am like sitting at a pool by myself, or I'm reading. Like, I'm not actively like doing stuff. I also, in my free time, will substitute teach high school, because I'm like, if I have the daytime and we only need social media at night, then might as well go do something productive during the day. So I do think I'm kind of wired to be as busy as possible at all times. And that's something I don't think I could teach people. But I think a lot of it is I've learned to almost triage of like what's urgent and what's not, and being really realistic about it, and like what needs full attention, what can be pushed to a different day. I think it's really easy, at least for me, to like think everything needs to be done right now, super quick. The first draft needs to be the best draft. It's all urgent, end of the world, let's like get it done. And a lot of the times it's not. And especially in social media, I know there's like, you want to keep in mind like metrics of like, oh, if we post at 3 p.m. it's perfect, but like sometimes you don't. And sometimes, it's not going to make or break a lot of stuff. You can compensate for it, start reposting things on stories, get other people to repost it. But I think I would like to be more organized. Like, I don't do like Hootsuite or any social media planning apps. I don't have social calendars. I just call a lot of audibles. But part of that is I want this content to be organic, and the average person that has an account is not like, I'm not going to schedule my own content for my J Slate account. And for these players, I'm an extension of them. So they're not going to be scheduling stuff. I want it, to be the highest quality. I want the captions to be intriguing. I want them to be interacting with fans in their comments, but they're not going to be posting every single day in a really scheduled, Mondays are motivational Mondays and we pick some quote from Rosa Parks. Like they're not doing that. And I don't want them to do that because that's not who they are. It's a lot of just kind of running it the way they would run it so that they don't have to, so that they are, at practice and not distracted. But no, I mean, I probably don't sleep much and I definitely don't have a social life. So that's part of it. But for me, I love that. I'm not sure that that's sustainable for everyone else.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, because it makes me think like you mentioned, you're on call, you get texts and calls at 3 a.m., 6 a.m., right? Like I feel like that's taxing on the mental health as well. And like having to unplug. Like I feel like sometimes you have to be time where you just unplug and be like, all right, like I gotta get away, or like because having to always check your phone and does somebody need something is taxing on your mental. So how do you deal with that from a mental aspect? Do you ever have times where you feel like, all right, Jessica, like we need to unplug for a little bit and just put the phone down? Or I mean, I feel like that's low-key impossible with what you do. Like, so how do you kind of balance that from a mental standpoint?
I mean, I would love to just throw my phone in the ocean and like never look at Instagram again. But I don't know. I think I should probably look into dealing with it better. But it's fortunate the guys that I work with, um, it's not like they don't bother me. So if they're calling me at 3 a.m., they actually need to. Like they're not wasting my time. It's not, hey, did you see this on Instagram? I wanted you to see it at 3 a.m. It's like, hey, the building's locked out and I need access to my cars, or like the team plane got delayed and we can't get Ubers or something. Like it's a real problem if they're calling me at all hours of the day. And typically they're pretty good about time zones, which I appreciate. Being on the West Coast, if it's 9 a.m. on the East Coast, please don't contact me if it's not urgent. So it helps that like if they're reaching out to me, I think what gets to me is more like the social media notification. So my phone is blowing up and it has nothing to do with me. It's like, this random guy from Ohio commented on the photo, or, this person sent a DM or they reposted something like that. And like those notifications, I want to just like turn it off. But again, I could be doing such harder labor and such more intricate work and, really stressed out. And a lot of things, I think the way I mostly deal with it is I try to be in good environments to be doing it. So the nice thing about like social media, a lot of it I can do from my phone. So like I can go to the pool, or I can travel and be in California and then Charlotte, or I went to Miami for a week to get content for fun. I mean, like I had a week that I could do vacation and I went and sat in a basketball gym and got content for players and the whole, Taylor Sports group down in Miami. So I think I enjoy it, which makes it nice that it doesn't feel as taxing. And then I just try to work from as many places that aren't a desk as possible so that it doesn't feel like I'm working nonstop, but even if I am.
Yeah. How many accounts do you have on your phone? Like social media accounts that you're like get notifications from?
Well, Instagram doesn't let you have more than 10.
Oh my goodness. Even 10 is
So I would be at 10 on Instagram. But then the other thing is like you have to think about how many platforms there are. So we have notifications from multiple accounts on Instagram, multiple accounts on Threads, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube. I don't touch Snapchat. I mean, I could, but at this point, I don't need to. And yeah, no, there's so many different notifications going through my phone at all time. Like when they created Threads, I know every social media manager was like, did we need another outlet? Like, please. So that's not great. But I don't know. It just becomes second nature. Like you just start operating and not thinking about things.
I need to get like you because I'd be stressed out trying to post on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. And that's a lot, but I'd be like, yo, like 10 accounts is crazy. So
Yeah.
I got a few more questions for you, and then we'll get you into some quick hitters and get you on out the door. But I listened to one of the podcasts that you did, and I was amazed. You were talking about some of the last minute requests. You were like, yeah, like sometimes, if I might get a request where, 15 minutes before, somebody might text me, can we get a party 15 at STK, or like we're trying to like, I'm gonna get it done. Like, how do you do that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what does that actually? Can you talk about someone maybe? What's the craziest request that you've gotten like last minute that you've been able to pull off that you're like, damn, like I did that, or I can't, or maybe I just something that was like, yo, like most people probably wouldn't be able to get this done, but I got it done.
I feel like I probably blocked a lot of them out of my memory because they stress me out. So like that's where I get stressed. I can deal with the social media notifications when someone wants a last minute reservation at Tao during Summer League in Vegas in July. Like I just want to be like, yeah, absolutely not. But then we make it happen. I do think again that goes back to like relationships. So I try to, anytime I have to like pull something off, I make sure I build a relationship with like that restaurant or that store or whatever, we needed to do, that driver. That, I'm very grateful to them and like I show that. But that I continue to build that relationship so that when I reach out to them, they automatically are inclined to try and help me and they trust, I'm really on my clients about like, cool, you asked for this reservation. You need to be on time. Like you need to be there. You need to respect that they made this reservation, that they pulled it off for you. Like don't show up 45 minutes late because we were waiting on people to get ready or something. Like if you want to be there at 9:30, that table's there at 9:30, get there. And they understand it. And I think they appreciate someone being like straight and blunt with them. So yeah, I think we have done some last minute reservations to Tao. It's hard to do really anything in like LA, New York, Vegas during Summer League where you can't like name dropping doesn't matter. Like everyone is a name and everyone is trying to get a table. And like if I'm like, hey, this basketball player wants it, they're like, cool, all other 42 tables are basketball players. Like he can wait. So that's where the relationships help. If they already know you, they're like, oh yeah, like Jess will, we'll make it happen. We'll pull a table out of the back or something like that. I think that's really the most difficult are those dinner reservations. But I'm sure there's other stuff that I've probably done. And I think even on top of that is like last minute editing where people are like, we need a video tomorrow. I'm like, do you know what goes into that?
Right.
I'm like, I have 3 audio levels. There's all kinds of different transitions and cuts, and you only give me iPhone video, but you need it, at a wide dimension. So now I have to like map every single video so that the ball stays in the script. Like that's the kind of stuff that's also like last minute. I'm like, okay, we're gonna pull off a miracle, but it happens. I have a pretty good track record of pulling things off.
Yeah, you're a different breed. You are a different breed. So that question I got for you before you get into a little quick hitters and have a little bit of fun. I feel like it's dope to be able to be somebody like yourself who's you have your hand in a bunch of different hats. You have a bunch of different skill sets, right? But when I feel like, and you mentioned right, kind of earlier, is that you don't want to have this like 5 or 10 year plan, right? So that's not what I'm going to ask you more so, but I guess what type of impact do you want to have in this space, right? Because I feel like as a woman in the sports industry, working in a male dominated industry like the NBA, like it's super rare, to be able to find in this space. A lot of times people only want to trust people who look like them or other men who have played a sport, right? So somebody who yourself hasn't played basketball, at that level, right? But still be able to be in these spaces and do the work that you're doing. I think that there is a lot of opportunity to inspire a lot of people or, grow to different skills and things like that. Do you ever think about what kind of impact you want to have in this field, like going forward or long term? Because, and again, not necessarily in like a position or kind of things like that, but just, what mark you kind of want to leave on this industry?
I think kind of I don't know how to describe it, but like a silent impact. Like I'm not really worried about getting to a point where I'm done working and I'm retired, and they're like, Jessica Slate was this type of, figurehead in sports as like an individual. I think if I can walk away and know that women have more opportunities and minorities have more opportunities, and that there's, a safe space for people to work, I think that's really important. Is a lot of times there's the opportunities, but then you get there and it's miserable. There's people still talking down to you, or mansplaining, or whatever the circumstances may be. You might have the opportunity, but it was not worth it. So I think continuing to, one, speak up. So I'm, really straightforward. If I don't like how someone was speaking or how someone acted, I will tell them. I think it's really easy and to not say something, and it's so difficult to speak up a lot of times when people are discrediting you or not, giving you the responsibilities that you're supposed to have, whatever the different things may be. I think it's easy to keep it to yourself because you're just used to not getting the treatment that you deserve, and, speaking up when you can. And so since I know I'm somebody that's willing to do that, trying to do it as much as possible so that if others aren't willing to, it's still creating a safer space for all of us to work in sports and work together, and creating, a consistent track record again with character and being reliable and trustworthy and not burning people's trust and expectations for me, so that when I get to the end, it's not, I've worked with this many players. It's, I worked with these players and all of them, will vouch for me. All of them had good experiences working with me. All of them feel comfortable trusting to bring in outsiders to their circle that they know might not look like them, might not have played basketball, whatever the circumstances may be. But I, proved to them that there's a space for those people as well, and that you can, trust them and rely on them, even if they don't have, the obvious markers of why you would want to trust somebody. I think that'll be important to me when I leave. Obviously, growing the sport is always kind of in the back of your mind, of not necessarily just basketball, but football and soccer and, any sport that I may work with and touch on, making it accessible for the people working it, but also for the fans, because that's what really drives the sports, and letting them feel comfortable and safe to watch sports and be a fan of that sport, and not, walk into a bar and have someone be like, oh, are you waiting for your boyfriend to watch the game? Like, no, I actually work for these guys. So stuff like that, like, you all probably deal with it, and I know the generations before me dealt with it even worse, but continuing to create spaces and opportunities for people so that it just continues to keep flourishing and grow the sport for fans and for employees.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I like that. I like that. So kind of get a couple little fun little games, and then we'll get you out the door. So this is a fun game I like. It's called Who's Most Likely To. So this game has got a couple questions, and it's going to be the first person that comes to your mind, right? This could be people who you work with, like this people who you work with. So either guys that are on the subscription, or guys that you work with one time. First person to come to your mind. So,
okay.
First question is, who is most likely to run up a tab at a dinner?
Based on all of my clients, it's really anyone, but I would say it's going to be because they're generous. Like, they're not the one running up the tab. It's going to be because they brought people. And I feel like Grant Williams is probably that person, because he will let the whole community sit at his table and will gladly take care of everyone. So probably Grant Williams is the most likely to run up a tab, but it's not his order. It's everyone else's orders.
Okay. Who's most likely to shoot a triple bogey on the golf course?
Triple bogey, also Grant Williams. Unless, he'll claim he has mulligans or something, but it's Grant Williams. None of the other guys golf.
Okay. Do you golf? How's your golf game?
Better than Grant's.
Period.
But it depends on the day. I haven't had a lot of time to golf lately.
Busy gal, busy gal. Okay. Who is most likely to be on the cover of Vogue?
I'll give it to Andre Drummond. Torrey Craig is probably the best dressed out of everyone, but Andre is really good at like interacting with like the fashion world, and of course he has Jessica who can help get him magazine covers and stuff, and I know that's something that he would be excited about. So I hope Andre makes it on the cover of Vogue.
Hopefully, hey, manifest it. Go manifest it. All right, so I know you always getting these last minute phone calls and players blowing up your phone, but if your life depended on it and you had to call one person to answer the phone when you call, who are you making that phone call to?
Um Probably Torrey Craig. He's reliable. I trust him with my life, I think. If I need help with stuff. Sleeps the least, so that I mean, he actually sleeps a lot, but late at night, like if I had an emergency, I could definitely call him. Yeah, I'd call Tori.
Okay, bet. So last segment I like to do is going to be a draft. So we're going to pick our, excuse me, dang. It's going to be favorite. I know you travel a lot. So it's going to be favorite NBA cities. Favorite NBA cities. So you're going to get the first pick, and we're each going to get 3 each. And you got to say your first pick, or top 3 pick, whatever, and then why. So you can get the first pick for best NBA city.
And are we thinking like cumulative or just like stadium experience?
No. Cumulative. So off the court, like restaurants, at the party, you want to go out, have a good time at night, like, all that.
You got to start with Los Angeles. I would start with Los Angeles. Again, West Coast, but yeah, I'd start with Los Angeles. Okay. And specifically a Clippers game, which is like out of left field, but I just think they have more entertaining games personally.
I've been to Clippers before. I have a twin brother, fun fact. And he worked for the Clippers last year. So I got to go to, I think, 4 Clippers games, the playoff games. Their in-arena people are super dope. People always
exactly. I mean, Lakers basketball is typically better, but as far as like full experience show included, I think Clippers put on a better production.
Okay. So for my first pick, I'm going to go ahead and insert my hometown bias. And my first pick is going to DC because like DC, number one, we have great food, restaurants, like it's a variety of food. If you want, obviously, Ethiopian, African food, Jamaican food, Caribbean food, we got a bunch of different restaurants.
Yeah.
The nightlife is top tier. Everybody, when they come to DC, I was trying to hit Rose Bar or Opera, Park at 14, stuff like that. So, we got what you need if you want to have a good time in DC and get some good eats. So that's gonna be my number 1 pick.
My number 2 pick, I was thinking Brooklyn, but I'm actually gonna go with Miami. And that's just because if we're including like going out, you can't beat Miami. And I love a beach. I love the palm trees. I am biased because Jimmy Butler is my favorite player, but Miami for sure at number 2. It probably could be number 1, but we'll give it number 2.
Fair. All right, so it fell in my lap, so I'll take New York, but I'll go Knicks. Because talking cumulative experiences, you got the Garden, obviously, as far as in-game experience, but then I feel like off the court, I think like when players come to the Garden, as far as like the outfits that they're wearing, they're trying to put on their best fits, they hit the tunnel walk, and obviously there's other options to go out as well. You got the coach, you got Spike Lee sitting courtside, a bunch of celebs, so I think that's gonna be my number 2 pick. Nice choice.
But my number 3 pick is going to be Phoenix, even though I live there. But it's very close with Toronto. Toronto is so much fun, even when it's freezing cold. Like, I love Toronto, but Phoenix has never felt like Phoenix is too good. Phoenix is concerning. It's too good of a time. So, and it's easier to move around than Miami and stuff. So we got to go with Phoenix.
Great choice. So I've never been to Phoenix before, and I've heard that so many times that like Phoenix slash like Scottsdale is like the time of
Mhm.
your life. So I need to make my way out there one way or another because I've heard so many wonderful things out there. And like, I respect that choice. And I was going to put Toronto as my third, but you kind of already gave them their shout. So I feel like number three. I'll go Houston. I'll go Houston.
Okay.
I feel like obviously that's strictly off of nightlife, honestly. I feel like everybody when people go to
Yeah.
Houston, they're hitting the club and they're going out and stuff like that. But my I think my third choice normally would have been Toronto. So I think we agree on that. We agree on that. That's dope. So last question we always ask, shout out to all the smoke. I gotta send them some love. Who is one person that we should have on the What's in Your Bag podcast? And whoever you say,
Mhm.
you got to get in your point guard bag, and help us give us the assist and help us get them on. So this could be somebody, obviously in the media space. This could be a player. It could be somebody who you think just has a dope story that people would benefit a lot from hearing.
Um, who do I like? I mean, I like everyone, honestly. Um, no, I mean, definitely a special shout out to Pam with WME. I work closely with her now that I work with Grant. She is so good at her job, and like it seems so flawless, and she's so happy all the time, and like you never feel like the stress bubbling over. She again is somebody that gets stuff done, and you're not even like you can ask her to do something and it will 100% get done to the best of its ability. And I think especially in agencies, it's really easy to give the agents and the vice presidents and CEOs and stuff all of their flowers, but the people down in player operations and the lower levels, Cam being a perfect example, is just someone that works so hard and makes everyone else's lives around them easier and just better, and could not be a nicer human. So she's somebody that I think would be fun to listen to.
You said her name is Cam.
Yes, Kim LaPrey. So I can send y'all her contacts, but she's the best.
Perfect. Yes, we definitely appreciate the assist on that for sure. Bro, I definitely want to say thank you for your time. I know you are a super busy gal, as we've talked about extensively on this podcast. So I don't take your time for granted, and I thank you for coming on here and just kind of sharing your story. I've learned a lot just about the different ins and outs of the industry and branding and marketing yourself, and kind of how to make it up this journalism ladder, and so to speak, and how to kind of get out of that as well. So I definitely want to say thank you for that. Thank you for coming on. I know for the guests, for the audience, if you guys have enjoyed this conversation, man, make sure you guys follow Jessica, show her some love. She's doing amazing work. So thank you so much for coming on. And I think this was a great conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for for bringing me on, and excited to keep watching as you go on your journey and do all your journalism stuff, and you're in your bag. So it's definitely fun to be a part of this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And shoot, man, I'm gonna keep you in the mind of if I ever got to make a last minute reservation and request. I'm not an NBA guy, but if you could pull some strings, I might, what I'm saying, I'm gonna keep that in
Sure,
mind.
for
Um,
sure.
no doubt, no doubt. Alrighty, guys, this has been another episode of the What's in Your Bag podcast presented by Bet Online. If you guys are still here watching this podcast, man, go ahead and tap that subscribe button. It goes a long, long way. Jessica obviously dropped a bunch of gems on this episode, so make sure you guys stay tuned for who we're going to have on next week. That's going to be all, folks. Until next time, peace.
Suave, 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 suave. I've been in my bag for a while, I'm invincible. Story of a young boss, grinding shit get critical. Calling on my bros one time, cause you special. I had some hoop dreams of right rounds for my mental. Every target that I shoot is on point like a pencil. Different route, change relationships, I'm so sorry. Came up from the trenches and I made it, I say hardly. Now